Are you new here on YouTube? Because so am I. So welcome. This is my first time making a YouTube video about anything. I like reading books and I like talking about books, and there's not always people in person that you can talk to books about. So I thought, hey, why not unleash what I think on the internet? Because there's no rule for that stuff. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. More specifically, wow, that coffee is good. More specifically, I wanted to do my July reading wrap up. I read 9 books in July. Some of them I have here in physical copy, and some I read on my Kindle. And I thought we could just go over that, talk about some new authors and things that I've been reading and just how it's fared. So the first book I read was Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is not an author I was familiar with before. I think I had heard of a rendition of The Fall of the House of Usher that she had maybe done a rewrite for. No, not a rewrite. What's the word for it? Anyway, she wrote a book called What Moves the Dead that I've heard about, which sounded really interesting, but I never read that book. Also, T. Kingfisher is really hard to find physical copies of where I live. I prefer to read stuff on physical copy if I can. If I can't, then Kindle. But anyhow, I read Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher, and this is my 3rd book by her. So I started with Thornhedge, which is a retelling of fairy tales, and I really like retellings of things, especially if it's retellings of fairy tales. And the book was just really interesting. It gave a new perspective that I hadn't thought about. It was a novella. It was short, easy to consume. I think I was in a place where I was looking for something small to read, and that book just had everything in it for me. It was magical. It was whimsical. It was just really easy to follow along, and the characters were really endearing and charming. And I just thought she did a great job overall. So I loved that book. And then after that, I read Nettle and Bone, which is not a series. I think it is also a standalone. I cannot remember if this was a retelling, but it was a really good book. I read it with a book club that I'm a part of. Side note, I'm a part of a lot of book clubs. One that I run myself. I will link the Fable link to my book club down below. We read books from different genres every month, or at least I try to. I'm trying right now to get through my physical TBR because that's an endless book person's problem. Anyhow, so I read Paladin's Grace. That is a part of a series though, but what I love about certain series is that it can be a part of series but also read as a standalone. The story gets wrapped up within the first book, but then it continues in the other books about other characters who you've met in the first book. So Paladin's Grace was like that. And it follows the story of a paladin named Stephen and a perfumer named Grace. So it was interesting because Stephen is the paladin and her name is Grace, so Paladin's Grace. Anyway, I pieced that together pretty late, but then I thought it was funny. Paladin's Grace is a really cute story. It is about a paladin named Stephen who has lost the god that he serves, and then he kind of gets mixed up with Grace and her friends, specifically because this murder happens and they're kind of wrapped up in the middle of it. And so that's essentially what the story is about. It's about their relationship. It's about solving this murder of sorts. It's sort of a cozy murder mystery, maybe. I think, yeah. But I liked the fact that the romance was kind of it was obviously there, but it wasn't in your face all the time. So I did appreciate that. I gave it a pretty high rating. So far, T. Kingfisher has hit it out of the park for me 3 out of 3 times. So I see her name and then I'm like, okay, I probably will like this book. And so I'm more inclined to pick it up. The next book I read was a nonfiction, which was this one. Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. I am not a big consumer of Murakami, not because like I don't like his writing. I just haven't read that much by him. I read After Dark a really long time ago, like when I was a teenager, maybe. Um, and then more recently, I read 1Q84, which made me feel like somebody put my brain in a blender, and that was just the feeling I got when I read 1Q84, which was a lot. So anyhow, uh, that was this was the book I read by him, and this is his nonfiction book on what it is like to be both an author and a marathon runner. So apparently Murakami is a famous marathon runner. I didn't know anything about this. This is like brand new information for me. Uh, so yeah, he chronicles what it's like um, to distance run. He's been training for a marathon since he's been really, really young. I think he started when he was in his late 20s or something. And it's interesting because he talks about the experience of both being an author and being a marathon runner. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything in here that's specifically like really highlighting the experience of one or the other. You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of writing tips in here, and there's not a lot of marathon tips in here. It's more just his experience of what it's like to do both. Um, and I personally started running recently, and so I saw this book, and I've had it on my shelf, whoops, for a while. Um, so I thought, hey, I should read it. Maybe there's going to be something in here that would benefit me. Wasn't super beneficial in that sense, but it was nice to know that mentally, when you think about running long distances and building up endurance and stuff, it does help you when you're thinking about writing, um, because it helps you power through when you're like facing difficult stuff. Um, and all of this is relevant because I'm a writer. I'm actually in the process of trying to get my first manuscript published, which I'm sure I'll talk about in another video. Um, but yeah, that was this book. If you like to write, like to run, like Murakami, then maybe you should consider picking it up. It was a decent read, not like it didn't blow my mind, but it was pretty good. So that was that. Uh, my next book was Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is another book that we read as part of a book club. And this one is Japanese translated fiction, but it's dystopian. And I think this woman is the same author who wrote the book The Housekeeper and the Professor. I have not read that one. I've heard good things about it. But this book was very intense. It was not chill in any definition of the word. This is set in an ambiguous future place where people live in a society where they're controlled kind of by the government, in the sense that the government can like take things away from your memory that they feel is irrelevant to your life. For example, like hats or scarves or socks. I don't know why the government would think that like having socks in your memory would be a waste of space. That's like having a 4 TB drive and then deleting like an image because you think it's like taking up space. Quite useless in my opinion. But anyway, um, and the main conflict is that there are some people. This is not a spoiler. It's on the back of the book. Um, for some people, the memory police aren't able to control their memories, like being erased or whatever. And these people hold on to things that have been erased by the government, and the government obviously has a problem with that. So there's a little bit of struggle in the book, and overall the dystopian aspect of it was really interesting. I've never come across dystopian fiction that's like dealt with memory before in the way that this book did. And I really liked the writing. I really liked the approach that she took with the novel. It was pretty fresh, and I'm a big fan of dystopian fiction. One of my favorite books of all time is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. If you haven't read it, please read it. It's really relevant, especially today. But yeah, so this one was really interesting. Not the only dystopian fiction I read this month. I will get to that. But yeah, this was my other book, and I rated it 4.5 stars. I loved it. If you like dystopian fiction, you should give this a go. Um, the next book I read was Belladonna. I read that on the Kindle. Belladonna by Adeline Grace. Yeah. So it's the new recent like romantasy sensation on TikTok, which, or sorry, book talk. And I have a problem with romantasy as a genre specifically because I feel like there's nothing of substance that's covered in these books. This is just my opinion of all the books that I've read. You are entitled to your opinion, and you should read whatever makes you happy. Like that's my firm belief. You should read what makes you happy. And sometimes you should read stuff that educates you because it's important, because reading is a privilege. Um, anyway, I digress. Belladonna was about many things. It was about a relationship that the main character has with death. Again, on the cover, not a spoiler. And also, she is an orphan, and she like is bounced around from one relative to another relative's house. And the main story takes place when she's at her last living relative's home, and her aunt is already dead. So her aunt comes to her because she can see spirits. Her aunt comes to her and tells her that, hey, I've been murdered. So like she gets on this case to track down who murdered her aunt and why and all that jazz. And she teams up with death to figure out the reason. um and didn't feel like there was a lot of substance plot wise. There were a lot of plot holes that I didn't enjoy, and the relationship was also pretty poor in terms of substance and reasoning, so I didn't enjoy it. I couldn't ignore the plot holes for too long. I did finish it, because I just wanted to get to the end to see what would happen. I did finish it, did not enjoy it, gave it a 1 star. If you like romantasy and you want to give it a shot, then you should do that. Um, cool. So the next thing I read was Beware of Pity. This is another translated fiction. I am a part of a book club that reads books from around the world. So this was our pick for Austria. Beware of Pity by Stefan Zweig. And I really like this cover. It's very like vibrant red with the little blues. This is by Pushkin Press. I love Pushkin Press. Like this other book that I'm going to talk about is also by Pushkin Press, and they have the most comfortable like covers, and just the pages feel so, like flexible. Like I love paperbacks for that reason. It just feels so fluid, like it grows with you as you read it, which is a strange thing to feel about paperbacks, but that's just my opinion. Anyhow, so I read Beware of Pity by Stefan Zweig. I think he's famous because he wrote that really popular book that everyone loves. I think it's called A Chess Story, or Chess, something related to chess. Um, but this one is his first and I think only proper novel. Um, and it's so hard to describe the plot of this book because it's so character based and not really plot driven. But essentially, what happens is there's this young officer from the Navy, and this story is set right before the start of World War I, when things were kind of like trouble was brewing on the horizon, but nothing had really started yet. Um, so there's this young officer, and he's moved to this town recently, and he's new and he doesn't really know anybody, and then he gets invited to dinner at the, what is this guy, like an archduke? I don't know, but this basically this rich guy who owns a mansion, and he's kind of influential in the city and the town. um he gets invited to his house for dinner. Everybody's dancing and having a good time, and then this officer goes and asks the guy who owns the house, like his daughter, for a dance, because it's the polite thing to do. He's here, he should ask her for a dance. But he doesn't realize that she's crippled, and then he feels really bad for asking her to dance when he didn't know she was crippled, and he's really embarrassed, and he flees the scene. But what ensues is a lot of decisions that he makes based on his pity for her. And then we just watch these consequences unfold because they're taken out of pity. um and it raises the question, like, what is the difference between pity and compassion, and all of that stuff. So I really liked this book. I flew through it. I think I read it in 2 days. And I'm a decently fast reader, but 2 days for such a thick book is still quite a bit. I think it's like 400 and yeah, my copy is like 454 pages, plus there's like a little afterword by the translator. But I love stories that are about human the human psyche, and like human beings making decisions and their behavior and why they do that and stuff. And I'm sure I'll talk about some of my like all-time favorite books that I've read over the past like 2 to 3 years, in which there's a lot of books like this. I so yeah, it was really interesting just watching these things happen. And there's a lot of conversation in this book. There's a lot of conversation where they're just talking and talking, and sometimes it feels like it's going nowhere, but it's trying to understand why people do the things that they do. So really enjoyed this. It was, I think, a 5 star for me. Let me just double check. Yeah, it was a 5 star for me. So I loved this book. Cool. The next book I read was The Village of Eight Graves. Yeah, The Village of Eight Graves by Seishi Yokomizo. A lot of translated works in here. 1, 2, 3, 4 translated works. Interesting. Well, technically 5, because I think Murakami wrote the book in Japanese. 5. Okay, cool. This is a part of a series, another series where it like kind of follows the detective, not really like the story is linear. And it's basically about this detective, not basic on it's not about the detective. The detective who shows up in all of these novels is called Kosuke Kindaichi. And the first book in this series, I think, was the Honjin Murders, which I read earlier this year, I want to say. Yeah, I loved that book. I was in a reading slump when I started that book. It was very short, and I really like murder mysteries where it's like a locked room, or you're reading it and you're just like, there's no way this could have happened. I like it when the suspect list is really small and then the detective seemingly solves it with these like little clues that were there but then you didn't really see them. So The Village of Eight Graves is essentially about this guy who comes back to the village that he was born in. He's like living in a city. He comes back to the village to claim some kind of fortune or inheritance or something. And there's a curse in this village that people keep dying. Like, it's a long story. You should read the book to find out, because the premise is really interesting. Yeah, so like every time some misfortune befalls the village, people die in like groups of 8. So it's been like 8 deaths and then 16 deaths and so on and so forth. So people start dying again when this young kid comes back to the village, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, you're cursed, leave the village, people are dying because of you. And then English. And then the detective comes into the scene and like solves the murder and all that jazz. I thought this was okay. I like the detective. The detective is kind of like my favorite character in all of these books because, well, he's smart, right? He's the one who's solving everything. Um, he didn't have that much screen time, page time, whatever you call it, in the books as in this book as much, which was kind of a like bummer for me. I liked seeing him solve stuff. There was a lot of action though. There's a lot of things that happen in the book. It was still well written. My only beef with it was that the detective didn't show up as much. So that was my main problem. The rest of it was fine. Yeah, it didn't blow my mind, but I did really like the premise and the writing was pretty good. So I gave it like 3.5 stars. Thought it was pretty good. Could have done better, but it was all right. So if you like murder mysteries, this is a series to check out. I don't know if I would recommend this book, but Honjin Murders was really fun. So if you like murder mysteries, that is one to check out. Oh, and another fun fact is that this book was actually published a really long time ago. I'm going to tell you when it was. He published this in 1971, but it got translated in 2021, and I'm so glad that they translated it because I love detective fiction. I'm always looking for good stuff in that genre. So the next thing I read was Fahrenheit 451. by Ray Bradbury. I have not actually read this before. I studied a lot of dystopian fiction in high school. That was when we read 1984 and Brave New World and stuff. But Fahrenheit 451 was not really something I had read before this. So I was excited to, because I've read stuff by Ray Bradbury in the recent year, like last year. Yeah, I read Something Wicked This Way Comes and then Halloween Tree, both like kind of back to back in October. And I loved it. I gave both of them 5 stars. I have a really cool copy of Something Wicked This Way Comes, but Halloween Tree I have to buy. So I knew I wanted to read this, and I've been in kind of like a daze. Some of the recently published books haven't been that great for me. They haven't hit as hard. So I've been kind of going back into the classics more and more. I'm trying to finish the things I own. I read some, I haven't read a lot. So Fahrenheit 451 was the book I read, and the cover is really, really cool. Basically, the story is about this guy who, his name is Guy Montag. He is a fireman, but firemen in this world don't do what firemen in our world currently do. They don't put out fires, they start fires, because people aren't allowed to own books. Yeah, so it says his job is to destroy the most illegal of commodities, the source of all discord and unhappiness, the printed book. It's really funny because I read this book and it's about people burning books, but at the same time, the way it's been written, you can just tell how much Ray Bradbury loves books and loves reading. And it's just excellently written, man. You should just read it. It was so good. And the story basically follows what happens to Guy Montag as he goes around setting these fires, burning people's homes and their books. And in some instances, the people refuse to leave. So the people, they die with their books too. Um, and it follows what happens to Guy as he thinks about the consequences of these things and starts questioning what they're doing and stuff. So, excellent read, very thought provoking. I actually want to write an article about this pretty soon. So, yeah, I would highly recommend. 5-star read. All right. Now, the last physical copy of book I read was White Nights by Dostoevsky. This one is the cute little penguin classics, but which one? Oh, the Penguin Little Black Classics. I don't have any other books in this copy. It's just so little and tiny and cute, like it can fit in your bag, you know. Um, it was funny though, when I started reading it, I was like, this doesn't feel like a real book because it's not bigger. Like I don't have that much hold. It just kind of ends before you get to it. Irrelevant completely to the story, but the story was. It was so good. It was so good because it was so real. The story is about a guy who is kind of lonely and in despair. And then he meets this woman one night by chance. And then they start having conversations, and it follows them over the course of, I want to say 4 or 5 nights. Let me actually check because I wouldn't want to be wrong. Oh, it's like 4 nights and then the morning. Yeah, it's like 4 nights and then the fifth morning. And it is mostly about just their conversations that they have, things that they share with each other. But the conversations that they have and the things that they talk about are so relevant to what people face today and still feel today. He talks about loneliness and um, like being afraid to talk to women because they might perceive him in a certain way. And the woman that he's talking to, she's kind of been like scorned, spurned off, what, like ignored, ghosted is the word we would use now. But she's basically like been ghosted by her lover who she's been waiting for a year. And so they have these conversations every night where they unburden themselves, they share, they have a real, very real friendship that develops. And then he's just thankful, like at the end of the well, not the end of the book, but like in parts of the story, especially like when he's talking to her, he's so grateful to have met her so that they could have had these conversations. And that part was so real, you know, like you just need friends to unburden yourself to sometimes. Yeah, because like we need community, we need people. So I really liked this book. The writing was so good, despite the fact that he wrote this ages ago. When was this published? I will tell you, because this is clearly very important for you to know. It was published. My goodness, it doesn't say. This edition was published in 2016. Yeah, that's great, but when was the real book published? Okay, apparently this information is hidden for whatever reason. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm completely wrong. They published it on, they wrote it on a separate page. It says White Nights was first published in its original Russian in 1848. So, wow, it's been really long since this book came out. And that's what I love about books. It's like somebody's written this book like hundreds of years ago, but everything that's written in the book and the way that the characters feel almost have little to no difference in how we feel today, despite how much the world has changed. And so that's why I feel some books just, they're amazing. They stand the test of time for this reason. So that was White Nights by Dostoevsky. The last book I read, which I unfortunately don't have a physical copy of because I would love to buy it, is The Summer Book by Tove Jansson. Another translated copy. This one was translated from Swedish. I believe the author herself is Swedish. Finnish Swedish or something like that. Either way, I think she lived in Finland, but her native language is Swedish or something. Yeah, so The Summer Book is a series of like vignettes, instances that take place over the summer, and it kind of showcases the relationship between a little granddaughter called Sophia and her grandmother. And it sounds really cute and warm and fuzzy, and for the most part it is, but there's also really real things that happen. Wow, really real. Great English. I'm a writer. Right? If only there was like a thesaurus in my head. There's just very real things that happen, that take place over the course of the book, that have to do with like what it means to be alive and the things that we feel and the things that we go through. So Sophia's lost her mom recently, and there is a little bit about loss in there. It's not direct in the sense that she's talking about like death to your face and saying that it's about death, but in the way that certain subjects are approached, it talks about loss. It talks about like losing your memory, not being able to do the things that you've always wanted to do, grappling with desire and other stuff like that. But it's put across really elegantly and really approachably, like especially if you're a kid or someone younger who's reading the book, it's not jarring. So yeah, the summer book overall was like really cute and really warm, and it gave me really wholesome feels. I really enjoyed reading it. It was like talking to somebody who, it was kind of like talking to a grandmother. Like she was narrating the story to me, and it was just comforting, and I really liked it. And I want to read more of Tove Jansson's books. I think she's the same author who created the Moomin family series, the Moomin Troll series. I didn't read it growing up, but I did recently play the Nintendo version of the game called Snufkin Melody of Moomin Valley. So you're playing as one of the characters called Snufkin, and then you're trying to rescue Moomin Valley from like these people who are trying to destroy parks and build, human crap that we always do. So anyway, she is the one who made up that series and those characters. So she's like a beloved children's author, which is why I think she wrote this book the way that she did. Like even though it's for adults, there's so much in there that like a younger audience could also benefit from. Yeah, I really love the summer book. There is a winter book as well, which I will get around to reading when the winter comes along. I am a bit of a mood reader more than I'm a seasonal reader, but sometimes I get in the mood when the season arrives and I'm like actually feeling the season. So so that's why when Halloween and stuff comes around, I like to read spookier books. So yeah, that's been my so yeah, I read, those are the 9 books that I read in July. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Please go ahead and let me know what you read in July and what you really liked or didn't like. And yeah, I would love to share recommendations with all of you watching. So thank you for stopping by. I hope you stop by again. And yeah, just have a great day and happy reading.